Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso right here on SABC3. The duration of the recent Women's Month celebrations in South Africa were anything but, seeing report after report of senseless and violent crimes being committed against women and children, with the crushing news and the confirmation of the rape and murder of UCT student Uyinene Mrwetyana being the straw that broke the collective camel's back. Now, with a strong national outcry that has seen gatherings for those who have lost their lives and protests demanding that laws and recourse change in the country, today we're asking the question: what do South Africans need to do to address the scourge of violence in our country? And this morning, we're joined by the founder and director of self-defense organization Fight Back, her ally, Jessie Clarke-McLeod, and CEO of ICHAF Training, Devan Moonsamy, to help us discuss this topic. And we would love to hear your questions and your comments as well. So you can call in on 021 110 5552, or you can also leave a comment on our Facebook page and we will engage with you live. Thank you so much to all of our incredible guests. Also, Nicole, Mirkin, thank you so much for coming with us today. Nicole. Yes. Nicole, Jessie's over there. Devan's over there. I don't know how you guys are feeling. Last week, I didn't know if I could get through it. I think collectively as South Africa, we were feeling devastation. We were exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally. It was all too much. But something incredible happened. 20,000 people gathered, marched to Parliament to say so far and no further, enough is enough. And of course, Nicole, you were part of that. You were instrumental in bringing that gathering, bringing that gathering to place. How did it all come about? And why was it so important for that moment to happen in South African history? Everybody put it on their social media. We saw the picture, 20,000 people.
So I think that South Africans have decided that enough is indeed enough. Yeah. And that we have cried too many tears over the number of women and children that we have lost senselessly to gender-based violence. Yeah. So the reason it came about is myself and Jessie, we know each other from back when we used to study. She feels very passionately about women's rights, as do I, and gender-based violence falls very much squarely into what our organization does, what Fight Back SA does, which is seeking to teach women self-defense skills so that they can try and change the outcome of an attack situation. Yeah. And I think the nation realized last week that we've reached a crisis state of being, and that we cannot continue along this path. And if we do, we're going to lose many, many more women. Yeah. And as a nation, we might just break.
Jessie, why is it so important that we continue to keep this fight alive? Because so often, and we've heard about these things for years and years and years, and we speak about it and then we go silent, and we speak about it and we go silent. But something happened, something pivotal happened this time around. Why is it so important that we keep that passion and that flame alive?
So you have to keep the momentum going. You can't show up to one parliamentary gathering and then think that everything's been resolved and everything's fine. Because now the president's come and made commitments, right? And we have to hold him accountable to those. Yes. And it's not enough to use the hashtag enough is enough. You need to actually be an active citizen and be putting yourself out there on the street. And you need to be supporting groups, and particularly marginalized groups who haven't been given a voice on these issues and have been suffering for years and years with gender-based violence in their communities, rampant gender-based violence, but they haven't been given access and platforms to speak out on that. And we need to, leverage our privilege. If we're privileged individuals, we need to leverage our privilege to support these marginalized communities in having a voice, and we need to mobilize behind multiple groups. So I think that we need to keep the momentum going, because if we don't keep the momentum going, then this is just a flash in the pan, and then that's where we stop. Like, we have to keep fighting and we have to keep going. And if people think that they don't have power, they're wrong. We were just two girls, and we managed to mobilize 20,000 people. And, so if you think that if anyone's told you you don't have power, they were lying. You have power, and we as people have power. And women of South Africa have power.
I love that.
And we need to say we do have power. We need to take back our power, and we need to mobilize and support other women in taking back their power.
I think we all expected and anticipated that there would be an overwhelming response from women. But what I was also quite blown away to see is how many men were standing in solidarity with women as well. Devan, why is it so important that men become a greater driver of this conversation and become more involved in the fight against gender-based violence?
Look, before the level of discussing the level of importance, just to commend these two young ladies for having to bring out thousands of people to enable their voices to be heard on the day. I think that was incredibly important as a start. But to answer the question, the voice that I'm hearing at the moment, and we were speaking about this earlier, is the voice of the rapist, the voice of the murderer. That man's voice that's communicating a level of fear, a level of anxiety, and that's the voice that's deafening at the moment. I'm tired of hearing that man's voice or those male voices. I would like to see fresh voices coming to the fore. I'd like to see men voicing their opinions in terms of support for these kinds of initiatives, coming out in their numbers, holding forums, and being able to communicate to our women that we are part of an inclusive society that protects and respects these women. So the voices that I'm very angry about hearing at the moment is the voice of the rapist, the murderer, the perpetrator, and that needs to be silenced.
Absolutely, and we all know the saying that evil prospers when good people sit by and do and say nothing, and I think evil is about to stop prospering. We're going to continue this conversation as we talk about the scourge of gender-based violence that is so prominent in South Africa, and we are saying enough is enough. More on that after this. Well, it's Monday, and today we're using our relationship chat as an opportunity to have a panel discussion on what South Africans need to do to address the scourge of violence against women and children. And we would love to hear your questions and your comments for Nicole, for Jessie, and for Devan. So you can comment on our Facebook page, and we will engage with you live. Thank you so much to our panel for returning. Jessie, I'm going to begin with you. Self-defense classes. It's a reality in South Africa. I cannot believe that this is something that we're talking about more and more and more, that women have to protect themselves, that they have to take self-defense classes. But what is the statistics right now that deem something like this necessary?
So I looked at the Stats SA report from May of 2018 because that's the most recent one that's available. So I just want to say that the information that's publicly available and readily available to define the scope of the scale of gender-based violence in South Africa, I feel is not adequate.
Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be greater effort to define the scale of the problem, because when I looked at Stats SA report that was supposed to be released in March of 2019 on violence against women in South Africa, they couldn't release it because there was issues with the methodology. So I had to go and look at Stats SA May report 2018, and in there they said that in 2000 the World Health Organization said that the amount of femicide in South Africa is 5 times higher than anywhere else in the world. And that was already like now 20 years ago already. And also additionally, if I looked at the police reports, it showed that there were over 170,000 reported incidents of assault against women or violence against women. That includes assault, rape, murder and assault, and that murder increased by 11% in the financial year from 2016 to 2017. So when we look at these statistics, and particularly looking at police statistics, because that's only what's reported, so it's problematic to define the scale of the issue by looking solely at police recorded statistics of what the issue is, and also the Daily Maverick posted a report by the ICHAF Independent Police Investigative Directorate, and they said that between April and September of 2018, 55 police officers raped women and 23 did so while on duty. So like now we're relying on reports put together by perpetrators, and these reports are also, so that's problematic. And then they're also only the reported incidents. How many women feel safe to go into a police station, to go, like, because they're not facilitated, they're not welcomed in these spaces, they're not heard, they're not, most of these, like Nicole said when she addressed the president, most of these police stations are ill-equipped, they don't have rape kits, there's no support there psychologically. So, like, our institutions are failing our women, and we also cannot rely on these institutions as our source to define the scope of the problem. That's problematic. Because these institutions are the problem as well in the first place. So,
where does one even begin then? Like, if the very fiber of our society is, like, this is not a now problem. This has been coming on for how many years? It's only now that people are saying enough is enough. Devan, where do we even begin?
And it's a very good question. And to build on that stat, every 3 hours in South Africa, a woman is killed. Every half hour in South Africa, a man's killed. So we're looking at about between 50 to 54 murders a day. And South Africa ranks probably number 4 after Lesotho and Honduras and Jamaica, I think, in terms of our murder stats. Now this, by any stretch of the imagination, is absolutely alarming. So when you have a country that's sitting essentially in a state of post-traumatic stress disorder, and all of us are, because we're reading about it, we're tweeting about it, we're looking at different social media, comments about the level of violence and the murder. And this is exactly where we are. We're living in a heightened state of awareness, post-traumatic stress, and extreme high alert. Serious action needs to be taken as far as this is concerned, because what happens to the average South African is that at the back of our minds, we constantly focused on this potential evil lurking in the background. And are any of us safe? Are any of us confident enough to step out into a working day without being the 50 or the 52 or 54 that are murdered every day, which is about 19,000 in the year in SA?
Nicole, how can we use this current state of unrest to drive the government? You were there, 20,000 women. You were responsible for bringing that about. How do we use this current state of unrest to bring about change in our country?
I think we need to seriously consider the type of momentum that Jessie mentioned earlier, in that we have to continue supporting women and supporting all members of our society to continue this drive towards, completely stopping the country if necessary, to focus on the fact that our women and children are dying. And I think that the first step was providing a safe space in which 20,000 people could come together, and facilitating a space in which even the president felt was mandated that he needed to appear in. And I think from that, as Fight Back SA, we're going to hold the president accountable for the response that he gave to our memorandum, which we gave to him on that platform on Thursday. And moving forward from there, I would encourage every single South African to not give up and to continue fighting this fight. Because like we just spoke about now, we don't know when we're going to be a part of those 50 people a day. Or I think the current rape statistic is an average of 109 rape cases recorded a day. Those are the ones that are reported. So to make a difference, each and every single South African needs to keep on fighting and not give up. Jessie and I have made ourselves quite available to support anyone that needs help in that regard. And as Fight Back SA, we're going to keep pushing workshops everywhere to every community that reaches out to us, completely free of charge. And I think that if each South African devotes themselves in that manner, we're going to see a real change.
Well, this is just the start of a conversation that cannot stop. Thank you so much, Nicole, Devan, Jessie, for being here today. We want to ask, what do South Africans need to do to address the scourge of violence in our country? We would love to hear your questions and your comments for our panel. So you can continue commenting on our Facebook page, and we will definitely make sure that we continue to engage with you.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso right here on SABC3. Well, it's a Monday, and you know we talk relationships on a Monday. This time we're using this opportunity to have a panel discussion on what South Africans need to do to address the scourge of violence against women and children. And we would love to hear your questions and comments for Nicole, for Jessie, and for Devan. So you can comment on our Facebook page, and we'll engage with you. Just like some of our Expresso viewers, Dion coming through on the Facebook page saying, "Good morning, Expresso. I am very inspired by the organization called Tsepo 1 Million, which is busy helping youth to find employment by offering them an opportunity for training in different fields. It's based in Tshwane in Pretoria. And of course, we know that employment and education is such an important thing as well. Bongi Nkosi coming through saying, since the tragedy of women and children abuse that's currently happening in South Africa, schools around my community in George are doing marches and tributes to honor the women and children who died and others who are still surviving abuse as well. And that's quite interesting, you know, the fact that everybody is getting involved. And I think it's always sad that we do it to honor people that have lost their lives. Hopefully now it can be to prevent this situation from happening. Jessie?
Yeah, but I think it's important that people are given a space to mourn the lives of women and children that have been lost to gender-based violence, because there's a lot of anger, and what's behind a lot of anger is grief, is pain. And for so long, so many people haven't been able to have a public space to honor their lives of their friends or family members that have passed to gender-based violence, because this has been such a silent issue. I mean, women and children have been dying for years, and now, you know, we have to let people be given a space to honor the lives and memories of those, because they were not publicly acknowledged, nor were they given a public space to acknowledge the lives of these women and children that have been lost. And so the thing about, you know, grieving and being given a space to grieve is that this first step to healing is to be given a space to grieve. So we as a nation are grieving the lives of the women and children that have been lost, and I think it's important. And I think it's important that people feel safe in these spaces, that they come into a space that can be, and that was one of our goals on Thursday, was that we wanted to make a space that women and people, family members, friends could come together and, you know, mourn and publicly acknowledge, because it's been too silent. Every day women are dying. It doesn't make the headlines. Why does this one make the headlines, but this one doesn't make the headlines, and this one's from this community and this one's from that community?
And if I may add to that point, the grieving process is so important, as Jessie illustrates, and the conversation has started. Somebody has died, lots of people have died, and now the grieving process, through dialogue, through conversation, people are starting to make sense of what's actually happened, and people are starting to become a little bit more proactive. What can I do? What can I do to change circumstances in my community, within my church, a religious organization? And this forms part of that grieving process. I just hope that this dialogue doesn't dissipate. I just hope that we keep the momentum going, so that more South Africans can have the conversation around how to build and pave the way forward now, so this doesn't happen to another student, another sister, another mother, another daughter.
Here's another comment on our Facebook page coming from Gary Okamp, who says, as a man, I am appalled and ashamed when I hear how men in the changing room at the gym talk about women. The vulgarity of how they identify townships where women can be found for sex. Men need to stop these horrible dialogues, move away from your cultural or religious beliefs, and realize that even though you may not be someone who would rape, your words regarding our mothers, daughters, sisters need to be uplifting and supportive, not degrading. Thank you so much for that one, Gary. And Devan, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you think the complicit silence of men has been one of the things that has been the biggest problems to this, that men have not made their voices heard, have not stood up for women like this? It comes from this, you know, gym room talk, this locker room talk. Do you think that that's been one of the problems?
It's a big part of the problem. And he's touched on very important points there. How are we treating women within our communities? Sometimes a woman would walk past a group of men. How are we engaging with that girl? Are we whistling? Are you hollering? Are you calling her name? And what's her response to that behavior? What gives you the right as a South African man to almost belittle and shame an individual who's simply walking past? These types of conversations are almost acceptable in certain men's circles, if we have to be. And I'm probably going to step on a few toes here with that statement, because all the men are going, well, that's not me. But men, there are some men within our communities who speak to women in a particular way. Becoming intrinsically aware of the way in which I'm speaking to the ladies next to me, speaking to my partner, speaking to my mother, speaking to general women in the work environment, in that awareness will come some sort of behavior a ripple effect of a behavior in terms of how I'm building up and not breaking down. Even, patronizing prostitute women on streets as an example. Are we, by even engaging in that level of activity, not within a controlled environment, those ladies very seldom report rape, report abuse, because there's a level of shame attached to standing on the street. And it's men who are patronizing these ladies. It's men who are paying for the sex. So it's men who are feeding an industry that's already derogatory, already degrading, bringing down the self-esteem of our women. So it requires us to have a very honest dialogue, a very real conversation as South African men. What are we doing? What's our position and our standpoint? And being very aware of my behavior, not just now, around the 16 days of activism against women and children starting in November going into December, but every day should be.
Exactly.
That level of activism against, the violence of women and children in this country.
Can I quickly touch on the call for punishment and the severity of the punishment when it comes to rapists and murderers of women and children? Where do we need to be careful when it comes to the call for things like even the death penalty?
So I think that is an extremely emotionally charged question, which is on every South African's mind at the moment. We are so distraught and we are so filled with pain that I think our anger is revealing that we want people to pay with their lives for the atrocities they've committed. Now, I think where we have to be very careful with that is, A, what happens when you give the government the authority to give and take life? I think that that's a very important question that we must add to that conversation. Secondly, I think that a lot of women that experience this trauma, that are raped, often it is by someone that they know. And I'm very worried that if we call for the death penalty, what happens if a young woman is, say, raped by her uncle? Will it prevent her from going to the police to report that case if she knows that she will be responsible for a family member's death? So there are it's a very multifaceted question, and I think first and foremost, we need to also consider our constitution when we look at these questions and the anger that we feel with regards to them. And I think as long as we ensure that we debate it properly and we analyze the situation properly, we'll get to the right solution. But personally, as a part of my organization, I think that we shouldn't necessarily just be asking about the punishment for these atrocities. We need to be fighting tooth and nail to prevent these atrocities from happening. I want to equip every single young woman with the ability to stop a man from taking advantage of her, to stop a man from hurting her. I think that we need to go into our communities. I think we should have a nationwide educational approach to this. I think we need positive masculinity classes. I think we need consent classes in our schools. I think that to truly solve this issue, we need government to step in at a grassroots level to change the mentality of our people and to change the possible future perpetrators from becoming perpetrators.
Yeah, Nicole's right. The punishment discussion is one discussion. Yeah. But I would like the energy channeled into a prevention discussion.
Yeah,
how do we stop this?
Before we get there, why are we focusing on punishing? We should be focusing on not having this happen or be accepted and normalized in our society.
And furthermore, I think if we can strengthen our justice system and ensure that our courts are protecting our women and helping deliver these judgments more effectively, then we're going to see a real impact and real change.
Protect and serve, that's what we need to do. Thank you so much to our panel. This is such a incredible discussion. Hopefully we can continue it more, because that's what we need to do. Never stop talking, never stop fighting for this. We've heard the cries and it's now time to act, because enough is enough. If you would like to find out more about Fight Back SA, then you can head on to their Instagram page with the handle at @fightback_SA. We are all hurting at this moment. Our hearts are sore in this human moment, lamenting the loss of so many innocent and valuable lives. So let's get together, let's stand together, let's act now to bring about change in the way that our country views and treats its most vulnerable citizens, and never, never stop fighting. Enough is enough.